meeting to order then, please. Shall we start with Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Terrific. Sorry, caption. Don't be the first. Please take roll, please.
Mayor Lundquist,
Present.
Vice Mayor Weiss, Councilmember Lewis,
Present.
Councilmember Whitmer, Councilmember DeGolia,
Okay. We have a full house, actually. Moving on to public comments. Is there any member of the public who'd like to make a comment for an item that is not on the agenda? Sure. Please. Generally limit these comments to 3 minutes.
Yeah, my name is Barry Chen. I'm the former mayor of City of Cupertino and also current council member. I'm coming here, 2 items, want to just bring you up. Lehigh is going to apply for the second pit mine coming up soon, according to Supervisor Joe Smithian. He told us it's coming up next few months. So just be prepared to fight together, because if they get that second pit mine, that means another 100 years pollution for the entire area. So that's very important, and I would like to bring you up. That's number 1. Number 2, Bay Area Air Quality Management District is considering Regulation 11, Rule 18. I'm not going to tell you what my position, because it's going to be on our city council agenda next month. So, but I urge you to look into that, do whatever you can. I think based on what I know, Regulation 11, Rule 18 will make it reporting much more stringent, 10 times more stringent than current standard. So which will be good for the protection of the health of all the people here. I personally experienced this Napa fire. I've been coughing like pretty bad in the last few days. I mean, because this smoke, it really does impact our health. And then so please looking into that and help. 2 items. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Linda Sell, and I'm a co-founding board member of Bay Area for a Clean Environment, which is an environmental nonprofit founded in 2010. I'm here to ask you to join with the Town City Council of Los Altos Hills and Los Altos City Council, which have authorized their mayor to write a letter to Bay Area Air Quality Management District in support of Regulation 11, Rule 18. In addition, Congressman Ro Khanna's office this week has sent a letter to Bay Area Air Quality Management District in support of Regulation 11, Rule 18. This regulation will regulate major sources of pollution in the Bay Area, such as the Lehigh Cement Plant and the Richmond oil refineries. The Lehigh Cement Plant is a major source of air pollution, and it warrants increased regulation. The Lehigh Cement Plant west of Cupertino is the only cement plant of the top polluting cement plants in the U.S. that is directly adjacent to a major population center. Dr. Gary Laxhaw, a retired physicist and respected local environmental activist, has studied the issue closely over the years and consulted with meteorologists, and the meteorologists explain that early morning airflow patterns, particularly during the summer, will transport pollution from the Lehigh Cement Plant to northward towards Atherton. So as we know with the fires, that pollution has no boundaries. The Bay Area Air Quality Management District regulates air quality from Petaluma to Gilroy. The Air Quality Regulation 11, Rule 18 will come to vote before the Bay Area Air Quality Management District in San Francisco next month, and BACMed is taking comment now. The benefit of it is that it will take the risk threshold, it will decrease the risk threshold by 10 times. And to get to that level, industrial polluters will need to put in the best technology, feasible technology, and that is available and can be done. So I ask you to support this effort. And you have supported this effort in the past with these cities and Bay Area for clean environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I provided a letter summarizing this, and also the letter from Congressman Rokana's office. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add 15
Of course.
seconds? Yeah. I went to town of Las Olas Hills meeting last week, and then their letter is also putting one of 3 more requirements. One of the requirements is lehigh has to be on the top of the enforcement list. So you can consult with town of Las Olas. They already passed and prepared that letter. So there's 3 more items. Besides 11, 18, they also ask 3 more items. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Any other member of the public want to comment on any issue not on the agenda?
Good evening. My name's John Fisher, 38 Tuscaloosa, 41-year resident of Atherton, friend of a number of you. Last night I had the pleasure of being in this room with the Atherton Bicycle Advisory Committee, and it was clear that there was a great deal of enthusiasm for anything bicycle and anything that would be laid down on the streets that was novel. There was a consultant in the room who seemed to be versed in some of the modern transportation devices. But I'm here on behalf of our family and on behalf of Ned Speaker, who is a 70-year Atherton resident, plus. I think I should stop at 70. We want to point out to you that the activity of the bicycle paths paints a picture of Atherton having perhaps too much money, and I'm perhaps too much in tune with the history of Atherton, but it is my perception that you all need to be aware that if you are spending lots of money on consultants, it gives an impression to the voter about your keenness on budgetary issues. Also, with respect to bikers, if any of you are bikers, I wish that any of you who are not would be, because the experience brought to us sharply in our posteriors by riding over the things that I now know are called sharrows. Sharrows create an impression on the derriere that is remarkable, and it causes people to go away from the sharrows into traffic. So sharrows are a liability issue the way they were implemented. Thank you for your consideration and for your budgetary keenness.
Thank you. Again, we're going to see no other public comment.
So I could ask a question of Public Works people.
Sure.
So as we move forward, of course, we're removing some of the sharrows and some of the laminates, and with any other ones we included, is that not correct?
That's correct. Moving forward,
So then
whenever
we're
a
not
road,
having any
anytime we do a road repair, slurry seal, whatever,
Right.
and if the sharrows are there and currently in thermoplastic, we're going to replace them with paint only. So very, very thin paint.
So that should start.
You wouldn't feel
I
anything.
mean, other good points. That's
Right.
one.
You wouldn't feel anything on the paint.
Okay, let's move on to the city manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You have the written report before you. The singular primary question that came out of the city manager's report this time around during my one-on-one was about Commendal Atherton High School and the incidents in September. Those were related to security checks at the high school, and the reason it was so high in September is it was the first month or so of school, and so they were out there frequently for events as well as school activities. And that concludes the report. Staff's here to answer any other questions the council may have.
Questions?
I have just a comment.
I think, let's see, no questions.
I want to just thank you, and I guess Robert also, for the work that you did on including in the report on the pension. I thought that the report was very good, very well done, and I appreciate the insights. Thanks.
I have one as well. I wanted to thank Joe and the police department and the chief for getting together the exercise that we're going to have related to the active shooter component that looks like it's scheduled for April 9th, 2018, and the location is going to be
Menlo School.
Menlo School. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Elizabeth, any questions on your end?
I'm good.
We can move on then to the consent calendar. We ask if there's any member of the public who'd like to pull any items consent calendar. See none, I'll say a question of council. Mr. Wiggin?
I'd like to pull 11 and 12.
Okay. 11 and 12. Any other? Yeah, that's true. Okay, any,
Can I make a motion to approve the consent calendar minus 11 and 12?
I'll second.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Why don't we then move on to item 11?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Item 11 and 12 are sort of linked together. They address the same issue, so it may be appropriate to take them at the same time. I don't know what the questions are, but staff's here to answer any questions the council may have for the written report. I don't know a whole lot about it, so I toss it over to the commander who may have anything writing.
Mr. Wiggin?
Okay, so first off, I went and did some research on actually the event that precipitated the writing, and I can understand the outrage of the city of Whittier and everyone in the region actually with what had happened with the a third-time offender and who not only shot and killed but wounded another officer and then taunted him, saying with some additional comments that came out in the press. So I can understand the strong reaction. However, I've got some concerns with regards to some of the things that are being asked of us in both of these, and I can go over each of them. First off, in A, I think it's the way that things are set up is that the punishment really needs to fit the crime. And what we're asking in A, and they're asking later on, is that when they're sentencing somebody, that they would go back and they would look at the pattern of offenses and other activities that have occurred on other crimes that he's already been punished for and possibly been released on. And that can result in actually a violation of, I believe it's the 8th Amendment, which keeps you from getting cruel and unusual punishment. And so from that standpoint, I just don't think that that's right. Secondly, I just don't agree with changing the words of resisting arrest, okay? Resisting arrest is a judgment item. And again, it may or may not be a violent activity. And so I just don't believe that we should be reclassifying things that are judgment ideas, okay? Because that just sets the law up to be questioned. On the next page, I think having the state parole versus the county doing county things, I think is inappropriate. All it's going to do is create further backup in the process, and we're going to leave people in jail that possibly should be out. And there's this thing that said is that it's better to let one guilty man go free than let an innocent man sit in jail. And I think some of these things are going to cause that. And one of the things here is in E. Okay, I don't think we should be redefining a release and back in, etc., as continued incarceration. I think that that's wrong. I don't understand the reasoning for redefining and eliminating the due process. I just feel that that's discriminatory. And so from that standpoint, I think that on number 11, I cannot support that. Look, I feel for the people at Whittier, and I want to have. I think we've done a lot with releasing people very quickly, and I think that, and I'm upset about it too. But I don't want to take away people's constitutional rights, and I think that this does on 11. I've got comments on 12, but I'll wait.
The questionary comment, it's a question of nature of comment, I guess, and it's probably go to the council. My understanding is we're talking about approving a resolution, which actually doesn't specify any of those A through H.
It supports those, it supports rewriting them, and then the next one actually has comments in 1408.
But item 12, but item 11, the resolution doesn't refer to any kind of either mention. Some of which, by the way, are already in law, as I understand it.
It's in the analysis as to what we're going to have, and it says that we support changing the strategies to reflect these. And so, as far as I'm concerned, my comment is that I can't support it.
Okay. I'll make the point that it does not say support strategies. I don't see to reflect these priorities in the resolution.
And why would they be in the analysis? Yeah, I read the report.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I have a question. Why is this before us?
That's a great question.
I don't know any of the background to this, and don't really feel prepared to make a judgment on it. So I'd like to hear why it's before us, and anybody that is an advocate for it, why you advocate it.
Go ahead.
Sure. So you've all served in the mayor's role, so sometimes you get things in your box that come from other communities, and that's the support, the general support numbers for the league or some other communities, much like we just heard in the public comment issue. This one came through the mayor's box. He passed it along with the city and said, hey, have the chief look at this. If it's worthwhile or something we should support, put together something for an agenda. And that's why I made it to your agenda today. You don't have a dog in the fight?
But actually, let me correct that. I did not recommend it go to the agenda. I
Oh.
passed it along for appropriate treatment. Right? I wasn't taking a position
Right.
one way or another on it.
Yeah. Didn't mean to infer that. It's just,
Yeah.
the next logical step of it would be either a letter or a resolution, so that's why it's before you.
Okay. And I take it that the background is that there's an incident that occurred in the city of Whittier where the mayor and maybe the city councilman in Whittier didn't like the outcome because of some interpretation of state law or application of state law, and they would like to change that state law because of the situation in Whittier. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say that most likely the way that it's done is they found in the investigation process related to the incident that occurred that these were deficiencies that they've identified as they've investigated this incident, and that's why they pulled it out and said, if we don't have that substantive information as far as the case information here, we're being told by them where they deemed that there were flaws and how the person that did the crime, there were these flaws basically in the system.
I did
Yeah.
do the research on it. So there was somebody who had committed a crime, got out on probation, committed another crime, served some time, got probation again, committed another crime, was out on probation, and then got into a gunfight. He was a gang member. He got into a gunfight. He killed one officer and he wounded another one, and then said, well, he'll be out again, so kind of taunting, and and he also said he wished that the guy he wounded should have been dead. So he made some derogatory comments as well to kind of throw acid on it. And so because this person had been in and been released and in and released, so he was essentially a 3-time offender, but he was out on probation. And so they don't want people to be out on probation. If they get out on probation and there's a violation, they want it to have the crime longer and to try and keep somebody like him in jail. And so it was defined around, this is defined around the situation that they had, which may or may not mirror other situations. But it was I'm sure it was a terrible crime for them, and it sounded like it. There were lots of articles on
Commander, just right there.
Yeah. Just for clarification for your first point, Councilmember Whitmer, the folks that they're talking about are on post-release community supervision. It's called PRCS. And so, yes, they have been, quote unquote, convicted of a crime, but they're not officially released. They're released out into the public, but they're still technically on probation. Now, with PRCS, what they do is you could have a litany of crimes that you've committed, but when you are out and on probation, they are only going to look at your last crime. So if your last crime was say a vandalism, that's the only one they're looking at. And if they look at that and say, oh, well, you just committed a vandalism, despite the fact that you just did this new crime, we're going to release you. And what this is asking is that the bill would require the panel who's making the decision on whether or not to release this person to consider the entire criminal history as opposed to just the most recent crime. Because sometimes the most recent crime doesn't even paint a picture of what is in this person's criminal history.
No, I understood that. Okay.
But I do share Rick's question about whether it's appropriate for council to get engaged on these two issues. So it's kind of
Normally, we deal with very local things that are totally appropriate for us because they are directly related to our communities. I must say, different people have different experiences, so they had an experience. There could be some impact on us. I mean, I suppose we could face a similar kind of situation at some point, but it seems kind of odd to me because it's completely out of the realm of the kinds of things we normally deal with.
So, as you know, I'm the liaison with OES and everything else, and this is obviously something that, in the interest of realignment and all these vendors being realigned to the county and the state, there's a big problem. And I think that this is kind of an example of what's created from the problems created from Sacramento that's, not building, jails, prisons, et cetera, and releasing them into local care. And I think that what we're seeing is a repercussion of all the alignment, the trifecta, the impact of that in the system. And the concerns are that officers, and I really picked apart it, even though I didn't go to the depth because I usually believe that the things that I get provided, I make my decisions on. So I don't, use Google or LinkedIn or anything like that to determine a history. I would hope that it would be here. So there's a deficiency to me. I don't have enough substantive information related to the case involved to really say, gosh, yeah, this really supports A, B, C, D, E, all the way through H. And I really don't, although I'm very concerned that this happened and that they've identified these flaws, I'm relying on what they're telling me is accurate and true. And frankly, I'm not a parole board and I'm not a county probation officer, so it's kind of out of my realm. I'm concerned that this exists, but I think that a lot of us are probably feeling the effects of that major realignment. And I do have some real deep concerns related to the fact that officers don't have more information to maybe enhance their safety while they're approaching somebody. And I think that, on Bill's comment related to the resisting arrest component, maybe if you knew of somebody before you walked up to a car or when you after you provided an ID, that it heightened somebody's risk, maybe they would be safer. And yet the officers, in my opinion, should be making it home to their families. So I have passion for what's here, but I don't know if I have enough personal information in this report to say that I can be supportive of the overall picture. It's probably 100% accurate and very supportable. I just don't have it here.
So a couple of options come to mind. One thing we could do is defer this and bring it back sometime in the future with more background information. What was the motive after that? Okay. George, you shaking your head? Is that-
Well, I don't think anything would change. I think that Bill's done a lot of research and Terry's got a broader picture, and I think Rick's comments about it really focused on local issues is more our realm. the perspective I'm getting is this is too global, it's too statewide issue, it's not really a local impact yet, so maybe it's not for our consideration.
It does have a lot of local impacts for some communities.
Yeah.
For instance, a lot of 1408 focuses on when somebody gets out on parole. Right now, if they're convicted of a violent crime or a sex offense, they search for a county in which to put them. This would say they automatically go back to the county where they committed the crime, right back where they started. So that won't, I could adapt heavily that there are a whole bunch of Atherton people that are going to be getting out of jail on parole to come back to Atherton. If we were in Whittier or someplace in LA or even some other major city that has a lot of gang members, it would probably be a lot bigger issue. But it's probably not going to be much of an issue here.
Yeah, I just think that it's right.
So, can I make a recommendation? Because I'm not really interested in saying yay or nay on this. I'm more interested in saying that just really isn't enough information for us to, you know, to be supportive of it. But I wouldn't want to send a message that we aren't supportive of the concerns that they have, because they may be 100% legitimate, and we may have equally the same concerns if we had all the information with us. So, you know, in that sense.
So perhaps the recommendation would be kick it back to staff, no action this evening, but track it, follow the issue.
Yeah, I have no issue if we have the mayor send a letter that says that we were sorry to understand the situation and that we're supportive of them moving forward and with their legislative body to take the steps that they need to have, and that we too are tracking the situation, and that we too are concerned about the changes in the state law with the release, etc. We can say something like that, but you know, I wouldn't want to go any further. I mean, that way they can work with their legislative aides, and as laws come up, we can then weigh in with our assemblymen and our senators. I think that's a better way to go forward than to take a stand, personally, because you know, because I've got some issues on what's on 1408 with what they want to change, not with what's there now.
Councilmember Lewis?
I'm listening, and I think the discussion is very informative. I was unclear exactly what was being asked, but you know, from the League of California Cities, their support of the letters or some affirmation of this, I felt that it was something we should do, and with the chief bringing it forward, that I felt that he would have done his due diligence, and I was supportive of it. But after hearing the discussion, I think the alternative course of action is probably the best.
So, no action.
No action on 1104.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tom. Shall we move on? Item 14.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is you heard this item at your study session earlier this month, and this is the RFP that's come back. Mike and Marty have a staff report for you this evening, very brief, to provide you some feedback regarding the RFP before you for consideration.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and members of the council. The recommendation is authorize staff to issue a request for proposal and RFP to retain a traffic engineering consultant to prepare a traffic study for long-range planning solutions, possibly using the neighborhood traffic management program. Some brief background: as you know, you heard this issue at your October 4th City Council study session, and staff requested feedback of what should be in the RFP. In your current staff report, on page 2, there's 14 bullets highlighted, and I'm not going to go through and read all those. Those are some of the items that the council asked us to consider and put into the RFP, which I believe we did. Also, this week in the city manager's one-on-one with the council members, there's some additional feedback that I want to just highlight and let you know that we will include this also into the RFP. Is that the listed streets in the RFP, or the current listed streets in the RFP are where recent complaints have been heard, but there are other streets that have also have high volume of complaints. We did not list all the streets, and the list that we have are not in any way prioritized based on the issues. We could have listed many other streets such as Selby, Polhemus, Glenwood, etc. However, through this RFP, it is our hope that town-wide solutions will be provided by the consultant for council's consideration to address and mitigate cut-through and speeding traffic in our town. Also, in the RFPs, the consultant will be asked to review and use data from recent traffic studies and analysis done by the town that could be used to minimize any redundancy or additional traffic data collection. In other words, to reduce costs such as the Los Lomitas traffic study, the Marsh Road traffic counts, Middlefield Road study, Selby ECR traffic study. And lastly, in the overview section of the RFP, we added that one of the goals is to benchmark the levels of service, assessing current conditions so that we have a starting point for future impacts. And with that, Mayor, I'd like to be happy to answer any questions.
You guys first trying to see if everybody knows any questions on this issue. Council.
Yeah, so Marty, when I spoke with George, and I think he agreed, so maybe it wasn't communicated. But on your analysis where you said talk about, and one of the things prohibiting left turn lanes off of, for example, Middlefield or any other major street, where we have a light, and we talked about this at the last council meeting, where there is a light, other than where there's a light, the lights can be programmed to say, just turn at this point in time. So we can have some left turn lanes at certain places because the lights allow that. It's the backups are where there is no lights, like at Watkins, for example.
Right.
And that's where they're holding up traffic. So that's, I think I would change that in the analysis section, which is on page 2 of 3 in your document. And I covered that with George, and I guess it doesn't. Other than that, I thought that we made the nice changes in the document.
Thank you. We can include that, Councilmember.
Any other questions? Any questions, good? Comments? Go ahead.
So, as I read through this, I realized, and I think how we work to implement a neighborhood traffic plan is something we've been talking about, and we're trying to figure it out still. And I think this is a move in the right direction. As I went through it, I realized that and it does reference that this gives us an opportunity to basically analyze data for future development, CEQA environmental reviews. We are aware, and the RFP is asking the consultant that we'd be hiring to analyze what the developments are around Atherton that are likely to impact our traffic. And I think that in the staff report, there's 3 developments that are referenced in Menlo Park, and certainly there's several developments that are ongoing in Redwood City. Between both Redwood City and Menlo Park, and I know that the consultant will look around and analyze those. Now is absolutely the time for us to benchmark the amount of traffic that is coming through our community right now. That amount of traffic may be more than we want, and that's why we have implemented the neighborhood traffic program, because we want to set a level of traffic and discourage cross traffic coming through many of these streets. And I support that. But it's absolutely necessary that we set benchmarks now, that we count the traffic counts now, so that when we do respond to any kind of review for one of these new developments that comes in, that we can point to any change that occurs after these developments. So before these developments have gone in, we've got to benchmark. And I think this gives us the opportunity to do that benchmarking. And frankly, I think that's the most important thing. Now, I do support being able to move forward on the neighborhood traffic plan. I think it's an important thing for us to enable in our community. But I really think this benchmarking is critical.
fire district meeting, one of the things that they talked about was impact fees on how they go to developers in advance and basically go after them for money because of impacts of their development. And they basically say, give us X because you're going to impact the fire district. I think that that's probably the only method that we're going to be able to get any money out of anybody doing any development, because they only care prior to them building or prior to an approval to actually do something. After the fact, they're built out, we're the last person that they're going to, worry about. We obviously have to figure the system's broke, and we're going to try to do our best to work within our constraints related to traffic. Clearly, it's something that we're impacted a lot by the development both north and south to us. I don't necessarily agree with the tactics used with our district, but it seems to be working. I don't think that every jurisdiction, if they start figuring out it works, and they decide that, well, if it works for them, it should work for us. I think there's going to be a point where everybody doing these developments is like, fine, I'm going to stay with the CEQA process, and I'll mitigate it through CEQA. Period. I'm not going to pay out anybody in essence. So I think it's a good benchmark. I do want to applaud staff for recognizing, and I'm sure it's the town manager, to build on what costs have already been spent on and use it as our tool. If we need to use it with the consultant to elaborate, expand the study to lower our costs, that's great. Secondarily, I can say that the traffic counts, I know that the traffic counts reflect, I think, 5 years ago. I think traffic has increased immensely on some of our streets. So maybe some of our prime target streets, it may be a reasonable assumption that, we're doing some counts and making sure that we're projecting off better counts.
Some are always, most are low.
Yeah, there's a map in the RFP. And actually, those counts were from the summer of 2015.
Oh,
yeah. 2015. And they were done back in 2015 to at least at that point create that benchmark.
Yeah, right.
So they are 2 years old, but one of the things we'll be looking at is if the selected consultant recommends some additional counts to supplement, what we already have.
Out of sheer curiosity, on the counts related to, like, for example, I've been getting sheriff's calls from residents on Atherton Avenue during certain hours. Now, do we have actually the numbers in the traffic study that basically says when our peak and how our volumes are in certain hours, or is it just a 24-hour period count?
What the map shows is 24 hours. It's AED. However, when we collected that information, it does have the peak hour information. It's not reflected on this map, but we can go back to the raw data.
Because that data would be actually helpful, and I apologize for acting like I'm controlling this. That data would be helpful if we in fact utilize no right turns, because maybe during certain hours it doesn't make sense to have no right turns, but during peak hours it may make a lot of sense not to have it. So that's good information to compound the overall analysis, easier to make decisions. Thank you.
Councilmember
Through the
Lewis,
chair?
Any comment?
Yes. So I totally agree with my other colleagues. And as Council Member Weiss said that he was blessed to be at the fire board, I think you and I were blessed to be at the Selby Lane ECR meeting last night with Mike Kashiwagi, and it was quite lively. And clearly, I support the townwide traffic study analysis, and I do want to make sure that in the request for proposal that we're very clear about the need to identify the cut-through traffic avenues and streets and lanes that are impacted by increased commuter-type traffic that are not residential Athertons just going to and from their homes. Intrinsically, I don't believe we can do an analysis of who is in the car and where are they going if they live in Redwood City or the county or Menlo Park or Atherton, those types of identifications, or Cupertino or whatever. I don't know if that's legal or not, or how that would even be measured, but we do have to have the benchmarks. It is a big problem. It's getting worse, and our residents are, in lots of ways, to the breaking points, and it seems to me. And I think that now is the time for us to do this. But we really have to make sure that all of those impacted streets are included in the analysis, and it's a thorough job. It's not just hit and miss.
As Elizabeth mentioned, she and I were at Selby Lane School last night, and this is, along with the city manager and Mike Kashwagi, this is a very hot-button issue for many residents. Very upset about the flow of traffic. And the overwhelming response of everybody that I talked to last night, almost without exception, was, would you just put a barrier up so nobody can come on our street?
Yeah.
They all clearly didn't want anybody on their street. They were fine with going on someone else's street. And I think that this study is actually very important for a few reasons. Well, we do need to update our data, no question about it. But I think we need, as a town, to have that conversation about, should we take an affirmative role of directing traffic to certain streets? We don't do that currently. We list these different minor arterials and collector streets. I think there's a big policy decision about whether we ought to be directing traffic away from the neighborhood streets, and if we did, where would they go to? The point that's always made, and is correct, is that traffic seems to be like water, and when you stop it up in one place, it will flow out somewhere else. So it's a very complicated process. I think it's one of the most important things that we do as a council over the next year or two. And I think this study is an important first step. It's got to be just a step in a larger process, because we do have a neighborhood traffic management plan by title, but the purpose of that plan is really to allow neighborhoods to step up when they feel the city has dropped the ball and is not sufficiently addressing their concerns. I think it's time for us as a council to start getting ahead and having actual policies. And it will require lengthy discussion with the residents. Everybody's affected, everybody's property values are affected, everybody's lifestyle is affected. It's really important. So to me, this is a very important first step in what is going to be a long and lengthy process. And I hope that we treat it that way, that we view this as a comprehensive, the start of a comprehensive review that ends up with something at the other end, and hopefully it gets buy-in from our citizens. So, yes.
I just have one comment, and it was in reply to Vice Mayor Weist's statement about the fire district and the way that they approach development and ask for impact fees correctly. Those developments are actually within their jurisdiction, so they have a unique leverage that the town does not have in that sort of a conversation. It doesn't mean we can't give that a shot.
For the record, I don't think it's possible.
Well, but what we have talked about, many of our comments that are going into EIRs and draft EIRs are ignored, and that we need to take maybe a firmer stand on trying to follow up on those and be more participative in those type of activities. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, along the lines of what the mayor just said. I shared with Carrie and with George the other day. If you drive just for the last 2 years, all the streets over in the east side of 101 in Menlo Park, all the way up to, for example, Station 77, it's chock-a-block with now speed humps. And so, while the fire district is telling us we can't put up retardants to slow traffic down on our streets, I find it funny that every other community seems to continue to do it, and that and even on streets that are leading right up to the fire station. So I think it's time for us to take some steps along that way too, because one of the ways that you retard and keep the people from doing cut through is you have some things that will slow them down and makes it a little bit less convenient for them to go. And if we start putting those things up, those are the things that we can notify ways of, and they'll take that street potentially out of their rates. So anyway, I'm in favor of us doing this, but I think that we need to, there's further steps that we need to take as a council.
I just want to make one final comment just to amplify what I believe is a huge concern, and that's the phone apps, and I will say I've been guilty of them. But, well, I shouldn't say I have. My partner that sits in the seat next to me is usually doing it because I don't touch my phone. But that being said, whatever that app is, other jurisdictions have said that this has been successful in dealing with these app providers. Like Mike said, and like Rick had mentioned, that trying to get ahead of something. So we know what we want to do, but maybe we should already start the dialogue and figuring out the route through these apps to try to mitigate and keep them on our main roadways, and then we'll deal with diverting them or making sure that the signage and that is appropriate based on the outcome of this and future discussions. So, thank you.
Apologies for extending this. It's an important issue. I think a really obvious point that I should have raised earlier. We have these traffic counts. One way we can measure impact of development around us is the fact that our town is not increasing in population. And in fact, our population is lower than it was not too long ago. And therefore, any increase in traffic is almost certainly not coming from our town. And so it's nice to get a count. It's a very obvious point, but we're currently bearing a lot of the costs and burdens that are being imposed in the town by people traveling through it. As part of a larger community, we have to do that, but we should be very aware of it. Okay. Any motion on this?
I think we're supposed to approve it, right?
What do you need?
Motion of approval with amendments as directed.
I would like to make a motion that we approve this RFP to go out with the amendments that we've talked about.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any none? Move on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Item number 15 is the city center update. I'm going to turn this one over to Marty, who has a brief staff report.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This is your monthly update on the Civic Center project. In your recommendation section of your staff report, there's actually 7 items there. And if it's okay, I'll take maybe one at a time. And then
Marty, if I could just after you give your overview,
Okay.
I think it would be important to take the lead certification issue separately, maybe deal with that first, but consider that a separate issue all by itself.
well, I was going to do them all separate, so
Okay.
quickly.
So make sure we on the lead when I do it first. Please.
Right, okay. The first one, Mayor, is to receive and file the cost model manager and project schedule. As indicated in your staff report, the cost model manager actually based on council action on December 20th, which were the council approved the lead certification for the library and also taking out the renovation of the corporation yard building at a cost savings of $1.43 million. The current cost model manager estimates the entire project cost for the library, civic center, in the corporation yard site area to be $50,733,960.
With built-in contingency.
Right, the contingency's built in there. And then regarding the project schedule, the schedule has not changed since the last time you've seen the schedule, so it's still, we're at about 90-95% completion of the construction documents, and we'll be ready to issue the bids sometime in March of next year. So any questions on the cost model manager or the schedule?
So March of next year is a little, we were talking about earlier times, I guess. Even for the, for the library, at least getting started a little bit earlier. I think we talked about a January or February shovel in the ground type of thing.
Well, the schedule changed a little bit with the deduct alternates that the council approved a couple months ago. So that added another month into the schedule to do those designs for the deduct alternates. So that's what moved the schedule back a little bit.
And these things that we're going to talk about later, are they going to add more and more time to it?
No.
I have no questions on this side.
So number 2, Mayor, is the is to request to authorize the city attorney to prepare the city manager to execute an amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry, hang on. This procedural, I think I'm here, Mr. Wood, you want to take one at a time and act on it?
Yeah, we're doing one.
There's no action necessary.
Can I make a suggestion? Can we take the lead item as a 1 and 3 through
6.
7?
Yes.
6.
6, just do it as a lump because
Sure.
they're pretty much the same.
Right. So the next one, Mayor, is number 2, is the lead certification for the City Hall Administration Building. As you may recall, on September 20th, the council approved staff and WRNS to do an amendment to their agreement for lead certification for the library. But at that time, at that meeting, council did not take an action on that or make a decision. You asked us to come back to this meeting to further discuss whether you want to do lead certification for the City Hall Police Building at a cost of $74,000. So that's what's before you right now.
Questions?
No questions of us, no.
Yep, okay. Comments? Thanks.
Yeah, I still have the same opinion. Look, we're designing the building to the level that we think we can afford, and I think we're doing a lot of great things with it. I think that, having the plaque on the wall and the certification, while it would serve as a source of pride and may lead to other things, I just think right now, we need to exercise some fiscal prudence, and I think the $74,000 to me seems like a lot of money to do this. And so I didn't see anything in this report that changed my opinion from last month.
Since I actually will echo those comments, I also was fortunate enough to go through the Sacred Heart component and hearing some of the members there during her development, and how it got to a point where, unfortunately chasing points, and I'm real concerned about the perception to the general public related to this component, when we really don't, we're in kind of an unusual state because we really don't know where our funding is going to be, and we don't know what the bids are going to be, so it's, to me, kind of similar to what I echoed last month. So I'm not supportive of moving forward with the $74,000.
So, through the mayor?
Yeah, please, Liz.
Yeah. So, I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I've looked at what we're attempting to do with the project and with our finances and the building budget, and it is, while it would be a nice thing to have, like that little checkbox, the LEED certification, it's not something that is like in commercial real estate. If you have a LEED certified building these days, you will attract more, a higher rent, in a sense, to that building because people are very, very interested in building green and saving the environment. And that's a fact, and I've got a lot of data on that. But since we're not in that type of a business, it is, we're in a budget saving and budget conscious business. I think it's a lot of money to just have that little checkbox. And I think that it's something that can be done after the fact. Actually, it may be a little bit more work to do that, but I don't think at this point it's something that is absolutely necessary. The other items that are following on are actually infrastructure budgetary items that we need to approve, I believe, in order to make the project continue. But this doesn't make or break the project. So my position has changed, that I believe that we should not spend this $74,000 at this time just for the design of a LEED certification criteria.
Staff is recommending that we do this. question. I mean, I assume there's a reason to do it other than putting a plaque on the wall.
It facilitates future grant opportunities through the mayor of the project. It is a, help me out here, Marty, but is there a significant benefit to it beyond maybe grants?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
That's probably one thing as well. But those would be after the project is complete.
I think that if we want to do this, there needs to be a case made for why we should do it, and I don't think that case has been made.
So I think like a number of people like here, when this matter last came up, I think that was the reason we hunted it over. I wasn't sure where we stood on it, and I was quite, I wanted to learn more. And having learned more and thought about it and talked to members of town and community about it, I am inclined to not move forward with this. This is a nice to have, it's not a need to have, and I think at this point in our project, given where we are, we should be focused on need to haves. So, and I think as Mr. Whitmer said, it's important for us to make sure that we are acting in a fiscally prudent way, that we're focused on saving money where we can't save money, and that we're not spending any money we don't need to spend. So in this category, again, it would be a nice to have. It's a great thing in many ways, but it's one that we're going to pass.
So with
So
that.
do we need a motion on this?
No, it's just no action.
No
Okay.
action.
So, with the mayor's permission, I'll list 3 through 6 really quickly here. I think I've talked to each one of you individually about them. These are the must-haves for the project related to the utility easements that are across the site from Cal Water, West Bay Sanitary, and our own tentative parcel map that we've got to eventually bring to the planning commission and back to the council. So these total, in total, about 106.
106,200.
In total. So the recommendation would be that you authorize the city attorney to prepare, city manager to execute amendments for items 3, 4, 5, and 6 related to West Bay Sanitary, Cal Water Main, tentative parcel map and lot line merger, and then the negotiation one.
So moved.
Any comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
I think Marty and maybe Bill, it just seemed that, I think all these things are necessary. There's not a question. I just wasn't sure why West Bay wasn't doing, for example, the construction designs for their sewers that they will be putting in. And the water district, when they're putting in water lines, they do the design. So could I just have an explanation, maybe from Bill or something, to understand why we, if we have to pay it, then I'm happy to pay it because it does need to be done. And I'm glad that they're paying for the construction, but I think that's reasonable. But I don't know why we have to pay for the design when it's their sewers.
Well, Councilmember, first off, we're in negotiations with West Bay and Cal Water. So it hasn't been determined who pays for what at this point. I had a meeting the other day with West Bay, the general manager, and we're moving forward with some kind of tentative agreement that council will hear maybe next month on that, just like we did with SFPUC. And then next week I have a meeting with Cal Water. However, the reason we need to have our consultant design it is to make sure it's compliant with all our project needs and from a timing schedule. Because right now West Bay says they want to replace their sewer line that runs down Dinkelspiel here in the next 3 to 4 years. We can't wait that long. It has to be moved pretty much next year. And so there's a timing period there that we need to make sure that gets happen. And having our consultants do it, make sure it fits in with all our other project requirements. And regarding who pays for what, we're still negotiating that.
Bill might have some feedback on that too.
There's a probability that in most of these, if not all these situations, we can force them to move their line to a new location. Problem is, if they balk and they take us to court to delay the whole project. The sewer, which goes under everything, and we can't start digging. So there's the carrot and stick approach that Marty's using in negotiating, and we talk pretty much weekly about this kind of thing. And I think we're making a lot of progress, and I just think that this is kind of the best way forward right now. There are other ways, but from what we're sensing from the other side now, we've got them kind of leaning a little bit more in our favor, and I think we need to keep pushing that way. finding anything we can do to make it easier for them to reach into their pockets, probably helps the cause in the long run.
Yeah, and the utility issues are the critical path issue now from a scheduling standpoint. As you know, when we break ground, those utilities, that's the first thing that's going to get done. And we can't wait on them to be designing whatever. We have to control all that timing. And that's why we need to have no give and take with all that.
So, I want to say, I don't think Bill's being critical. What I think that the entire council is going to say probably for the next 3 years is everywhere we possibly can save money. You know, I know that you guys have been programmed, George has been programmed, and Bill's been programmed. We understand that you're going to make the best effort because, I mean, that's the goal. So if we can save the taxpayer money and divert it onto utilities, perfect. A percentage of it, a dime, we'll take it. So I think that's really.
That's always my starting point.
Thank you.
So we need action for
So I'll
items
call-
3 through
I'll
6.
Call the vote on the motion, correct?
So moved.
I think Elizabeth made the motion already.
And I second that motion. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So no opposed? Do that.
Is that for items 3 through 6, right?
3 through 6.
Okay.
Correct.
And then the final item, Mayor, is just receive and file regarding the Planning Commission action that our town planner is going to be taking to Planning Commission October 25th, and that is to provide the heritage tree removal request from Planning Commission. And you heard some of this issue back in September 20th regarding the trees behind the library over here. And so the town planner is going to take the rest of tree request to Planning Commission. And also a recommendation, to get a recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve the tentative parcel map to come to council at that point. And that'll be something November 15th, that you'll hear that. And that's all that's going to Planning Commission on October 25th. And that completes my report, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
And I believe, any member of the public wish to comment at this point?
Can I make one final comment, please?
Yes.
I think that I'm speaking for the entire council. Elizabeth, can you wish your better half a happy birthday today? Or we all wish you were with you?
Yeah. So I'm missing the birthday dinner at the lodge right now. So thank you for making it quick. I'm going to get dressed and go over.
I don't like it.
Have a great time.
We wish we could join you.
Yeah.
There's a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.